Fallback is free, right? We can specify this guy like this. On reset, we are not giving anything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, it is expecting a fallback component. Instead of that, we can directly specify fallback. We're not giving a component here, right? So fallback is the JS6 what we are giving. So if you see, this is how the error while loading component is coming. What if this guy is not having any errors? Now this is true. The data is coming. In this case, our component has to get rendered. Okay, so if you see here, when I'm reloading, this is looking fine. And assume like there is something called as false. So you're having this error, but this component rendering is not stopping. Even though there is a error here, but I'm still going with the next part. So this is what we call it as error boundaries, handling the errors. I mean, you can directly use the user-defined hook, or you can go with the predefined error boundary component itself. If we use the hook, it is going to return the component. Otherwise, you can directly make use of this predefined component, which is again coming from the React error boundary itself. It is expected any component what you are adding should be under error boundary component. I think Swati, you asked this question. Hope you are clear. Okay.
Sir, could you please repeat the again?
Just give me a second, please. Okay, sorry. Yeah, sorry, ma'am. What was the question?
No, sir, I was asking to, explain the flow once again.
Okay, very simple. What I'm saying is, assume like there is a component which has to get rendered. If at all there are any errors while loading, there is something called as component 2. There is something called as component 3. Whenever there is an error in so and so component, obviously remaining application, how to show a fallback component when there is an error. To handle those, we are going to keep it inside the error boundary component. Okay, where this error boundary component is coming from, this component is actually coming from your React error boundary predefined library. Under the React itself. Now, if you see, my expectation is data component is the component which has to get loaded. When it is an error, application is not breaking, but instead you will be getting this fallback mechanism. If you say a component has to get loaded instead of this message, you can say fallback component. If you want to put some custom JSX, you can put it over here. On reset, for example, on reset, what I have to do, you can just give a button, on click of button, it will try to re-render the component. And what this component is doing, this data component, if you go into this data component, he's simply saying like, I'm taking one Boolean value. Assume like if the data is coming from the API, this will be true. Otherwise, it will be false. When it is true, I'm saying like throw new error. You are the one forcefully throwing that error. When I'm saying this line number 9, exception is coming and there is no one to catch it. But who is going to catch here? Error boundary is the one who's going to catch it. Whenever while I'm rendering this component, if I'm getting any error, I will not stop the application flow. Instead, I will be rendering this guy. Am I clear?
Sir, once we can move on to that component.
Sorry, what it is?
Data is the other component.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Yes. Okay. So now when there is an exception, who is going to throw this or how it is getting to know? That is what your component is going to take care of it. Any time, whatever the child component on reset, etc. stuff. Am I clear, ma'am?
Suppose if the component is having a child component,
Any
Absolutely.
component. For example, again, come to this guy only. For example, I am calling this function, say something called as ABC is the method what ABC is the method what I'm calling. That ABC is calling something called a sample. That sample is calling something called as test. When there is an exception in the test, is the catch is going to come? Yes. Any piece of code under this, when there is an error, automatically catch will come. Any child component under this data component, that guy is having another child component. If those are throwing an error, automatically this guy will be coming. Am I clear, guys?
Like, sir, my doubt is like, suppose the child component, having the possibility of causing an exception. In that
Mhm.
case, also we will mention that throw new error, that thing in the parent itself.
No, no. Why we throw this? Do you think this is like you are forcefully throwing an error because I am not fetching a data, right? I am
Yes.
not fetching the data. That is the reason I'm forcefully throwing an error to show you guys saying that when there is an exception, how it is behaving. But in general, we don't do this. We don't forcefully throw unnecessarily. Why user will do that? For example, there is a data what you're not expecting from the server, or you are expecting some data from the server, but you have not got it. It automatically throws an error, and when automatically throws an error, automatically this fallback will be coming into the picture. I am doing line number 6 to forcefully make it as an error. In general, we don't forcefully add an error.
We don't be catching that exception, nothing, but simply if there is any abnormal flow of execution, automatically the fallback which is present in error boundary will be executed. Right, sir?
Exactly. Any abnormal behavior, any exception which get raised in this children, I automatically take care of it. That is what your error boundary is doing. Clear?
But we are not actually trying to resolve that error, but simply giving some indication to the user.
We are
That's
not
it.
doing a catch block here because when it is a JavaScript code, there is a concept of handling it. But when it is a component, I don't have a concept of handling it. Instead, I'll be saying like message to the user saying that, okay, something has been broken or something. Like you're just educating the customer who is using it.
Sir, overall, sir, what can be said? It is asked in the what is the
Overall,
use of error? Like, what can we answer? This kind of question is asked in the interview.
the
Like, how
same
to?
exception. If I ask you why the reason we are going with the try catch, if someone asks you, ma'am, like why the reason you're implementing the try catch within your piece of code, the reason is I don't want to make the application to stop abnormally if there is an exception within the application, right? Why the reason we go with the try catch? When there's an error, it should not get stopped all of a sudden. It has to continue. The same thing with the components. If I have n number of components, when the component is failing, instead of stopping the application, all of a sudden, I'm still continuing with the flow. And that particular component only will make sure corresponding fallback component will be shown to them. Clear?
So that means that's fine. It is going to show some fallback, but how to identify if there are multiple nested components? Like, how, at least we need to indicate the user, right? Like, the error is caused in which component, which nested component. Like, how
You
it will
look as a
recognize.
developer, no, you understand, you as a customer for internet banking, hundreds of components get loaded. What is the information, what help you will get? I say that customer component is failing. You as an end user, do you really think it is useful for you? Component wise, nested component, child component, do you think you'll be having an idea of it?
No, no, not at all.
That's it. End user, think from the perspective of the end user. For the end user, I want to see the account balance, but that block is not coming. They will simply say that error while loading account balance, please try later. Then in the background, it is a component which is failing, which has been taken care by your error handler.
Got it. Sir.
Okay. Any other questions, guys? Okay. So the final thing I'm still pending with is this server side rendering. Okay. Let me even cover. That's very simple part. Cancel. Server side rendering. I think I am done with my time. I said like today is the final, but is that okay? Tomorrow I'll just take a short class and I'll finish the server side rendering, guys, because I might not be getting time to finish this. But sure, for sure, I'm going to take very less time to finish the server side rendering because we don't need to do much. Whatever the component it is getting, instead of that, like we have created some web services, right? Some local host. If you say local host, say something called as 3000, when you're hitting this guy, earlier it was throwing like express and so. Instead of that, we will be returning a component, and that component is getting generated from the server side. That is what we call it a server side rendering. But I'll show you practically in tomorrow's class. Okay. I promise I'll just take a short class and I'll finish that guy. Hope
And
it's fine for
deployment
everyone.
also.
Sorry, deployment,
Deployment.
right? Actually, for that, I tried with something called as Firebase, but it is asking for the payment details. So that is where I have blocked. I couldn't able to show, even though I'm taking for the free, but it is asking for the card details and all. But still,
So
let
we
me try
can
for that.
so we
Sorry,
can do through Vercel.
I will check out. Okay. Again, I mean, deploy. We'll discuss about that part also tomorrow. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
Thanks,
okay,
guys.
did
Have a
you
good day.
get any free online SOAP UI to
Free online for what?
like you have shown an example for how to call the RESTful, right? Or SOAP services.
Yes.